Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button. Today I'm going to show you some R&B techniques right inside of FL Studio. So if you're a beginner, I'm going to walk you guys step by step through this process. Firstly, we need to open up FL Studio. We're in FL Studio 24.2 to see the current, the same layout. What we're going to do is click this channel rack right here, and we're going to go to the browser. Now this is slightly more advanced because you guys have to understand the concept of one-shot samples. If this all gets confusing, get the project files for free, busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. In my browser, which is this button here, we're going to go to the friends folder or my friends folder, and we're going to go to a folder that has one-shot samples. One-shot samples are basically one note that's sampled as an instrument. So stuff like that, or, bass notes. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll right click, hit open in new channel. Any notes that sound decent. So these sound pretty cool. Let's open that up. Sounds pretty cool. Let's open that up. Right click, open a new channel. Let's do this. And let's have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have at least 6. So you want at least 6 one-shots for this technique. Okay, so to find these one-shots, you can find these in our sounds vault at busyworksbeats.com/premium. You guys can get the Black Friday bundle, so you get that included. Anyhow, what I'm showing you guys here is a new technique. We're going to go to the channel rack. Now that we have all 6 of these, we want to send these to the mixer. Double click or left click, highlight these, hit Control L. If you don't see these numbers to the left, hit Alt+M. That will hide or reveal. Now what we can do, this is a little advanced, but I'm showing you guys the techniques here. Click on each sample. Let's go to mode, stretch mode. The reason this is important, I learned this from Larry O, is because each sample will basically have the same length for the most part. So let's go to mode, stretch mode. Okay, let's do this for each. Now we can get more particular about the fine details, but let's just put everything on stretch mode. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go to the plus icon in the channel rack. What we'll do is we'll create a layer that has all 6 of these samples in it. So when we play one note, it plays all 6 sounds. Let's go to the plus icon, find layer. Now layer is kind of tricky because you have to have it open while you're doing stuff. Kind of weird, but we have it open. Just kind of drag it to an empty space away from the channel rack so you can see. And then highlight all of the 6 sounds that we just imported into the channel rack. Hit set children. What we're going to do now is play one note, and it will trigger all of those sounds. That's important because we're going to do something else called random mode. So this is similar to Arturia's pigments. If you guys want to create pigments for free in FL Studio, this is how you do it. We're going to go to random. So now when I hit a key, it randomly triggers any one of those 6 samples. So if I play really complex chords, I don't know if my keyboard's plugged up, but if I play really complex chords, it will now trigger any one of those 6. So it becomes super random and super lush sounding, which creates that new R&B type of sound. What we need to do, however, is right click, go to piano roll within the layer. Now let's start creating some chords. I'm going to show you guys the shortcut chords because it's too much to explain the music theory behind all this. But let's go to the chord stamp right here. We're going to go to where it says advanced. We're going to go down to where it says lowercase m and 11. That stands for minor 11th. We're going to add this on E. We're going to drag this out. Hit Alt G to ungroup the notes in the case that you ever want to move individual notes around. So now we can play all those notes as one. Let's hit Control down. It's a little bit high of an octave. So now again, we're triggering, if I hit this note, it will play random notes. So every time I hit it, it plays a different sample. And those subtle differences create a really unique sound. Okay, so now let's create the next chord. This next chord is going to come from the chord stamp. We're going to go to what's called the lowercase m7, which is a minor 7th chord. We're going to hit Alt G. We're going to take what's called the 5th, which is 7 notes up from the root note here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's called the perfect 5th. We're going to highlight this note, hit shift down. Okay, that's going to create that R&B sound. And lastly, let's go to the chord stamp. Go to advanced. Let's go to major ninth. And we're going to go to D major ninth. You don't need to memorize the chord progression. It's not about the chords per se, but the chord types. Notice how many notes are in these chords. Let's highlight this entire chord, hit Control left click, and then drag it all the way out. Okay, so now we have a really unique sound. Okay, so let's go to the playlist, song mode, drag pattern 1 in. Highlight all these. If I ever move too fast, go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio to get the project files for free. Now this is the more advanced part, which is you guys need to have a real drum break. Okay, so let's go to our drum breaks folder. You guys don't get this by default. You have to look online for drum breaks. Okay, so this one's called Boom Bippity from Beat Butcher. Is the best drum breaks on the planet, period. Beat Butcher has the best drum breaks I've ever heard on the planet. They've collected all the best drum breaks. Okay, so here is Boom Bippity, or Boom Bippy. Let's drag this into the playlist. We're gonna use what's called clip gain to turn this down just a little bit. Let's go to song mode and let's just hear what is. Okay, so that's a natural vibe. Now what's wrong with it is that it's not, matching our tempo. So we need to double click on the sample. I learned this from In the Mix. Go to mode, stretch mode, turn the time knob up and lock it to the nearest bar. So if I just move around, it will lock. Okay, so what I want to do here is just turn this down a little bit with the volume. Let's hit Control L to send this to the mixer. Okay, so that's a cool vibe, but let's say we want it to change up over time to feel more R&B. Let's highlight this, hit Control B to latch paste only after you've locked it to the nearest bar. Now my favorite part is grabbing the slice tool. Let's go to snap to grid, 1/2 beat, or you can go to beat, but half beat gives you a little more room to work with. And now we're gonna hit Shift, left click to do vertical slice, Shift Alt, left click does a vertical slice anywhere. So if you don't want to be locked to the grid, you could do Shift Alt, but I'm gonna hit Shift, left click to do vertical slices so that it lines up. Now my favorite thing to do is replace the snares and kicks. So let's highlight the snare, hit Shift, left click, do a vertical slice. I'm gonna do one thing here so that these numbers don't clog up our screen. Go to the drop down, let's go to View, and let's go to, I always forget where it is every time I wanna look for it. Okay, let's turn off show gain value here so that we're not distracted by those numbers here. Okay, so let's hit Shift, left click, and then slice out just the snare. So what we can do now is use what's called the slip tool. This is great for DJs and hip hop producers because you can create a drum break but change it up so that it feels natural. So now when I zoom in, instead of the snare, I'm hitting Control left click to highlight this loop here. So let's say I want to get rid of the snare and make it something else. I can left click and drag to make it something different. And that like stutter effect is part of the R&B sound. So let's do this a couple more times. I've even done this, I believe, in our Tyler the Creator tutorial. So let's hit Control B and let's do things like cutting out the snare or cutting off the ends of stuff. So let's cut off the end of this one, hit Shift, left click. Let's grab this slip tool and grab something else. And now we can go over here, use the slip tool to make this different. And now it will be different from the other ones as well. So really unique drum groove, but it sounds realistic like somebody played it. So let's hit Control B to latch paste. Let's hear it from the beginning. Now, I believe we can go to individual sounds here, like the bells, and go to the wrench tool, turn up portamento. I think it will work. So we'll pitch bend only that sample. So now we can have individual samples pitch bending. You could also use loop modes as well, like forward, backward looping. But we don't need to get complex here. Okay, I was trying to find the bell sound. Here it is. Okay, so I'm pitch bending the bell, so now it has like a wing type of sound to it. Now let's go to the channel rack. Let's go to a new pattern here. We need to add a bass. Let's click this plus icon. Let's go to flex. Flex usually has the best bass as far as acoustic stuff or electric bass. But if you guys want like synthetic bass, look for Harmore's good, Morphine plugin, Poison plugin, Toxic Biohazard has some pretty cool. Actually, let's use Toxic Biohazard. Has some pretty cool bass sounds. Let's click in here. Let's go to bass. Just click any preset. Let's hit Control L. I'll show you guys a simple bass formula. Let's go to pattern 1 here. Let's hit Control C and let's right click the pattern. Let's go to find first empty, hit enter. we're going to go to our bass, hit Control V. So we're just copying and pasting the notes. Let's go click in the window here to go to what's called the piano roll. Hit Control Shift, left click to highlight all the notes except for the bottom note. Hit Control X to remove that note. So now we have just the bottom notes of the chords. Now let's go to the song mode in the playlist, which is this button here. Left click to drag, pattern 2 in. I would recommend you change your snap to grid back to a bar mode as well. Okay, so that bass sounds really good. One thing though, it needs to have short notes for the type of bass it is. So let's hit Control A and just hit Alt, left click to make sure the notes don't overlap. Now this bass sounds really good. So what we'll do is add little accent jump notes. So a quick way to do this is take your root note and add a note 7 notes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is called the perfect fifth. You can also add a note just above this called the sharp fifth. And this is a really good kind of, if you need more notes to jump to, that's a great way to do it. Another thing is octaves, taking this note and making it the same exact note but 1 octave higher, and then jumping back down to the fifth, what's called. I know I'm kind of moving fast here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The fifth of D would be A in that case. So now I'm just walking down the bass. Okay, so let's copy this again. Hit Control, highlight these, hit Shift, left click, and now I'm just going to change up this note structure here. Okay, now to make it a little more groovy, let's go to Toxic Biohazard, go to the cog icon, the wrench tool. Let's go to where it says time shift. Pull this up just a little bit. What this is doing is moving the notes a little to the right so they're not perfectly lined up to the grid. It makes it sound more human. Let's add a little more note delay here. It's a little too early. We want it to fit in what's called the groove. Remember our drums, I'm trying not to get so geeky with the beginners here, but basically our drums don't start perfectly on the downbeat. There's a gap here. So we want the bass to kind of be behind the drums a little bit. So we have to manually nudge the notes to the right. You could do this without moving the MIDI using this wrench tool, time shift. You don't want it too delayed or else it sounds a little sluggish. So I'm just going to delay it a little bit. Now I'm going to show you guys a more advanced technique. Let's go to the mixer here. Remember all those 6 sounds we sent to the mixer earlier? We can combine them and add effects to them all at once. Let's go to a blank mixer insert. In this case, insert 14 is not being used. We're going to right click this, go to rename. Let's call this melody. And we're going to hit Alt left to move this closer to our one-shot samples. Hit Control left click to highlight all of the one-shot samples. Right click this little up arrow right here and route to this track only. So each one of these one-shots will be grouped into what's called this melody group. And here we can use a new plugin like Transporter by ImageLime. Now this plugin's really cool. It's a little difficult to use as a beginner. Even as a pro sound designer, it's tricky. Okay, but what I like to do is turn down loop A and loop B. I turn up my reverse. I turn up the pitch shift. In this case, we already have high notes, so I'm curious how this will sound. And let's turn on bounce mode with the spread wider. And that should be all we need to do. And basically when we hit play, we need to click on where it says update loop A for it to activate. So this is what we're adding, is like a background tone, which sounds pretty cool. So this is how you add the texture to your loop. Now the thing is, how do you record this? we're getting an advanced world, so beginners, you don't need to follow these steps. For people who are advanced, this is something you might want to do. Go to slot 2. We're going to go to Edison. We're going to switch this record mode to on play. We're going to hit record on Edison and just don't do anything. Just X out. Now we're going to hit stop twice on the master play button. We're going to go to transporter. Make sure this is open. So when I hit play, I can click update loop A and B. And basically it will trigger the effect. And all of the audio from our melody will record into Edison. That's basically what we're doing. This is not for beginners. I know it's confusing. But long story short, we're just going to hit start and hit loop A, update loop A and B. I think I hear the effect. It's hard to hear it though. Let's mess with loop A and B, the amount. So now we're adding texture. Okay, so now we have a unique texture that we can't get anywhere else. Shout out to FL Studio for making this possible. Click Edison back open, and now we can double click where it says song jump and send this audio to the playlist as an audio clip. If you don't see that button, make sure you drag Edison to be big enough to see all the buttons. Send to playlist as an audio clip. So now that audio that has the effect on it is now sent to the playlist. We're just going to double check to make sure this is not overlapping the bar, which it is. Grab the slice tool, hit shift, right click. That little overlap can mess up a lot. Okay, and now that we have the melody as a texture, we can just leave it in as the texture. Now what I should have done was recorded just the effect. So let's actually do this one more time. We're gonna mute that, but you guys can have that. You can use that and just mute, using the mute tool, mute your original MIDI. But what I want to show you guys is how to actually have the texture by itself. We're getting advanced again. I just want to show you guys how to turn your beginner sound into a pro sound. So now let's do the same exact thing, but this time I'm going to, I guess we can't do it that way because how is that going to work? Let's see if this even works. Firstly, it might not work. We're going to go over here, hit control, left click up top to make that a loop. We're going to go back to the melody, do the same exact steps, go back to Edison, click the load, go to new to reset. Switch this to on play, hit record. So now Edison is ready to record once we hit play in our song. Let's hit stop twice to reset the play button. Let's go back to the transporter and let's get ready to hit the button. Now what I'll do this time is turn down the dry level. I'm not sure this will work because I think it needs a dry level to even work. I might be wrong though. So let's hit start and then we'll click this button. Okay, I was wrong. Okay, it doesn't need dry signal. So we can click to update the loop for different parts. And now I can mess with these knobs, these faders, to turn loop A up or loop B up. Okay, so now we have that texture by itself. Now I can hit stop. I can go into Edison. Because we recorded that, we now have it. Let's hit stop. Let's double click again on where it says song jump. Send audio to playlist as an audio clip. So now we have just the texture. I'll rename this so you guys have it. Again, I know that was very advanced. As a beginner, don't expect to know what I just did. It's very advanced actually. But I'm trying to give you guys the real melody and texture. Melody plus texture. Okay, so we have the melody plus the texture, and then we have the original texture to the right. Let's hit control, unloop that, and I'm gonna cut the ends here with the slice tool like I did before. So now we have just the texture. So let's say we want to remove the chords, but we want to keep that vibe. Let's just right click, delete the chords. And now we have the texture in the background. And we can let the bass shine. Let's turn up the bass a little bit. Oh, you know what? I didn't realize we had the plugin back on. So what we'll do now is delete transporter. We don't need it. We don't need Edison either. Okay, so my fault. That was my mistake. So here is what the texture sounds like. So it's not necessarily music, but it derives from music. So now you guys have a really pro sound. And now we're going to bring the original chords back. Technically we can mute the MIDI because we don't need that. So now we have a really unique sound for our song. And now I'm just gonna mix it a little bit for you guys. You don't need to memorize these steps. I'm just doing it to make it louder. Alright, so I just added a fruity wave shaper and a fruity soft clipper to make this beat a little bit louder. And again, we can try out different bass sounds. We don't have to stick with this one, but it sounds good. Let's just try out different bass. All these sound good, but I like that first one though. Just had the vibe. Let me show you guys one technique. Here's my last technique. You can double click on audio. Has to be audio. Go to pre-computed effects and mess with the stereo delay. This will create a wide sound that sounds really good. It widens out the drums and helps the timing a little bit. Alright, you guys will get the project files for free at busyworksbeats.com/FLstudio. Crazy R&B tutorial. If you want to learn music theory that goes behind all this, go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials. I'll leave a link below. Use code 50 for Black Friday to the end of the year for 50% off all of our courses. Peace out, guys. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.